Greetings, zombie fans, and welcome to another video about the game 30 Seconds to Live. My name is William Angus, and I am the creator and designer of the game. And in this video, we are going to walk you through an entire game. You will see both sides being played. You will see what's in their hands and how the game is played. This video is not going to show game setup. That is covered in a separate video. And please note that this is a full playthrough of the two-player game. The solo game is different, and there is a separate playthrough of a solo game that you can watch if you'd like to see how that is done. Two things I want to say before we get into the video. The first is that normally the zombie cards would be facing the zombie player, which is to say they would be upside down from the perspective of the survivor player. For the purpose of this video and simplicity, everything is facing the same way. It would make for a very difficult video if I was to have it shown accurately. The second thing is that in this video, I discovered that there is no zombie player attack deck discard pile shown. This is an oversight, and it doesn't affect the gameplay, so to correct it would be quite challenging. And so I'm just going to make a disclaimer that yes, there should be a attack deck discard pile. There isn't one, so please just ignore that fact. Again, it doesn't affect the gameplay or the video in any way. This playthrough is going to begin after the game has been set up. Again, that is handled in a separate video. We can see both players' hands on the right-hand side. So let me just walk you through what you're looking at and go over with you what is the game objective. 30 Seconds to Live is a two-player head-to-head zombie card game. So one player is playing the single human survivor, and everything that they do will be in the bottom half of the screen. The other player controls all of the zombies, and what they do is going to be on the top half of the screen. Going down the middle from left to right, you see numbered cards, ranging from 1 to 10, and then a card labeled the street. The objective for the survivor player is to move from row 1 all the way to row 10, and eventually into the street. The story of the game is that the human was hiding out in a warehouse encampment. The group there ran out of food and other supplies and were desperate to escape. So some of them set out to find vehicles that they could use to make their escape, and when they returned with them, they were followed by zombies. The zombies broke into the warehouse. The human player escaped out the back door, which they barricaded. And now they have to get out of the alley, which is represented by the cards numbered 1 to 10. If they can get to the street, there is a vehicle there, they have keys, and if they get there, they will be able to drive away. So their objective is not to kill every zombie. Their objective is to escape the alley as quickly as possible. The objective for the zombie player is to stop that from happening. They want to attack the survivor, get them to 0 health, and if they can do that, then the survivor player is dead, and the zombies have won the game. I'm not going to go through a detailed explanation of everything in the game. This video is simply going to show you what exactly is done, but I will give a couple of quick explanations. The white arrow tokens in the bottom half of the screen is the survivor energy. So they spend that energy on game actions, and once they have spent it, then their turn is basically over. The zombie player has 5 green energy tokens, which you see at the top, and this allows them to take their actions. So in this opening setup, you can see that the survivor has 4 cards in their hand. There are 2 tactics cards and 2 weapons. And Each player's turn is divided into 3 phases: a draw phase, an action phase, and a resolution phase. In the draw phase for the survivor, they draw a card and put it in their hand. In the action phase, that is where most game activity takes place, such as movement, attacking, drawing cards, playing cards, etc. And in the resolution phase, any game-required activity is cleaned up and taken care of. The zombie player's turn is similarly broken down into those same 3 phases, but they have the added step in the draw phase where they will move most or all of their zombies for free, and in some cases may remove some knockdown tokens from some zombies. You'll see that as we get into play. But other than that, their turn works functionally in the same way. We begin the survivor player's first turn with the draw phase, and they draw 1 card from the tactics deck and put it into their hand. In the action phase, they play both the brick and the handgun from their hand. This does not cost any energy. The survivor spends 1 energy to move from the first to the second row. They spend their second energy to pick up the supply card from the alley and then put it in their hand. They spend their third energy to move to the third row. The survivor spends their last energy to fire their handgun at one of the zombies, and they rotate the card to track the ammunition. They are firing at the shuffler in row 6, and so they draw 1 card from their attack deck, and it is a miss. We know that it's a miss because the survivor is standing, so we look at the top line on the card, and we see that that is a red X, and that means it is a miss. During the resolution phase, we remove 1 of the time tokens from row 1 and set it aside. The zombie player begins their turn by drawing 1 tactics card and putting it in their hand. They then move all the zombies in play that do not have a knockdown token on them according to the movement value on their card. In this case, all 4 of the zombies in play, their normal movement is 1 row, so they all move 1 row. Again, this does not cost any energy. This is a free action that occurs during their draw phase. The zombie player spends 4 energy to move the brute 4 rows into the same row as the survivor. A zombie cannot attack the survivor unless they are in the same row. This is considered a range of 0. Now that the brute is in the same row, the zombie player spends their 5th and final energy to attack the survivor. Just like with the survivor attack deck, we look at the top line of the card because the brute is standing, and we see it as a green check mark, which means that it is a hit. So we track the survivor health by rotating the card twice, and that would be the end of the zombie's turn. However, the zombie player plays the card Dead Run, which does not cost any energy. It allows a base zombie without a knockdown token to move up to 2 rows. So the walker will move from row 7 to row 5. And that concludes the zombie player's turn. The survivor begins their turn by drawing 1 card from the tactics deck and putting it in their hand. There is a maximum hand size of 4 cards enforced during the resolution phase, and they now have 5 cards in their hand. If they don't use at least 1 of the cards in their hand, then they will be forced to discard 1 at the end of the turn. The survivor player enters their action phase and spends their first energy to fire the handgun at the brute. They draw an attack card, and we can see that it is a success. Normally, the handgun would do 3 damage at this range. The brute has the special ability that it reduces any damage it takes by 1. So, under normal circumstances, the brute would now be at 2 health. However, the survivor player plays the card Critical Hit. This does not cost any energy, and it is played after they have successfully dealt damage, And what it does is turn any amount of damage that has been taken into a critical hit, which kills the zombie. And it is placed in the discard pile. The Brute card has a supply card indicator in the top right corner of the card. This indicates that when it is killed, it drops a supply card into the alley where it died. So the Survivor player places a supply card in row 3. The Survivor spends their second energy to move to row number 4. This will trigger the warehouse zombies. During the initial setup, 4 zombies were placed face up in rows 6 and 8, but there were 3 zombies placed face down in row 1. These zombies are inside the warehouse and were considered out of play. The zombies break through the barricade and enter play when one of 2 things happens. Either the Survivor moves into row 4, or if the last time token is removed from the first row. In this case, the Survivor has entered row 4, so the zombie cards are flipped over. These zombies are now in play and can be used by the zombie player on their next turn, or targeted by the Survivor if they wish to attack them. The Survivor player puts the card in their hand, and they are allowed to equip it for free. So they spend no energy and place the card in front of them. The Survivor can have a maximum of 3 weapons in play at a time. So they are now at their maximum. They cannot add another weapon without dropping one of the others first. The Survivor spends their last energy to move forward into row 5. During the resolution phase, they remove all the tokens that were on row 1, as the warehouse has now been opened and there is no need for those tokens any longer. The zombie player starts their turn by drawing a tactics card and putting it into their hand. They then move all zombies in play without a knockdown token in the direction of the Survivor by the amount of their normal movement value. The zombies that are already in row 5 do not need to move. They are where they want to be. The Shuffler, who is in row 1, will move to row 2, and both of the runners will move 2 rows up to row 3. The zombie player enters their action phase and begins by spending their first energy to attack the Survivor with the Crawler. The Crawler can make a standard attack, which if successful would do damage, or they can make a grab attack. A grab attack won't do any damage, but will knock the Survivor down and allows them to latch on to the Survivor, which provides additional benefits. In this case, they are going to make a grab attack, and so they draw a card from the attack deck. If the Crawler was making a standard attack, we would be looking at the middle line, because that is the line for crawlers and zombies who are knocked down. In this case, however, they are making a grab attack, so we look at the bottom. We can see that the attack is a success by the green check mark, and there is a knockdown indicator. In this demonstration, we will rotate the Survivor token 90 degrees to reflect that it is knocked down. In the actual game, you would place the standee on its side. We then place the Crawler card underneath the Survivor because it has grabbed them. While the Survivor has been grabbed, they cannot take any action other than drawing or playing cards until they kill the Crawler. They cannot attack other zombies, nor can they move or stand up. Normally, there are a maximum of 3 zombies allowed in the row. Because the Crawler is now on top of the Survivor, the row has been opened up, and a 4th zombie could now enter the row. The zombie player spends their second energy to attack with the Shuffler, and we draw an attack card. It is a miss. They then spend a third energy to attack with the Walker, and it also is a miss. Normally, a zombie can only attack once per turn. However, when the Survivor has been grabbed, zombies who have attacked are allowed to attack a second time. So the Shuffler attacks again, spending the 4th energy. It is a miss. They attack again with the Walker, and finally, they score a hit. So this will do 1 point of damage, and we rotate the Survivor card again to reflect that. This ends the zombie turn. The survivor begins their turn by drawing a tactics card and putting it into their hand. They decide to immediately use that card, and they spend 2 energy to play Double Headshot. Double Headshot allows them to fire a gun once and to hit 2 zombies with it. The zombies must be either in the same direction or both at a range of 0, and they take the damage as shown on the card. In this case, they each take 2 damage. They target the crawler, which they must kill, and they also target the shuffler, and both of them are killed, and both of their cards are placed in the zombie discard pile. The survivor spends their 3rd energy to attack the walker with their machete, and they draw a card from the attack deck, and it is a miss. It is a miss because the survivor is on the ground, and therefore we look at the middle line, which is a miss. If they had been standing, this attack would have been a success. The survivor decides to spend their last energy to try again, and it is also a miss. This ends their turn. The zombie player begins their turn by drawing a card from the tactics deck, and then moving all the zombies in play, with both runners now moving up into row 5. They spend their 1st energy to attack with the walker. It is a miss. They spend their 2nd energy to attack with the runner, also a miss. And the same thing for the additional runner. It is also a miss. They spend their last 2 energy to play Zombie Horde. The card has the additional cost of discarding a card, so they discard the card Poor Aim and put it in the tactics discard pile. If the players are playing with the timer, the zombie player can pause the timer while resolving this card. They would reveal the top 5 cards of the zombie deck, and they may place any 3 base zombies into row 10. Normally, a zombie card would be placed in one of the rows indicated at the top of the card, but in this case, this card overrides that, and they all go into row 10. The zombie player decides to take a shuffler, a walker, and a runner, and then puts the crawler and the friend Anthony into the zombie discard pile. This ends the zombie turn. The survivor begins their turn by drawing 1 card from the tactics deck and putting in their hand. They immediately use that card and spend 0 energy to stand up. The survivor then spends their 1st energy to play the tactics card Fast Hands. It allows them to make 2 melee attacks, but because they are playing the MMA fighter, they are allowed to actually make a 3rd attack. They use their machete to attack the runner in row 5 and draw an attack card, and it is a success. When attacking with the machete, it will do 2 damage and also do knockdown. However, it also has the potential to do a critical hit, as indicated by the exclamation point. The survivor player draws another attack card, and if the top line is also a green check, it will do the additional damage shown in the 2nd icon. In this case, the card is a hit, and so it does 4 points of damage, which is enough to kill the runner. This will put a supply card into row 5. After that attack has been resolved, the survivor plays the tactics card Clipped. It is played after they successfully attack with a melee weapon, and it does 1 damage to all other zombies in the same row. The runner and the walker each take 1 point of damage, and we rotate their cards to reflect them. The survivor makes their 2nd attack from the fast attack card and attack the runner. The attack is a success, but it does not do a critical hit, so the runner takes 2 damage and is knocked down. We show that they are knocked down by placing a knockdown token on. The survivor player makes their final attack from the Fast Hands card, and it is a miss. The survivor spends a 2nd energy to make a regular attack on the walker, and it is a success, which is enough to kill it, and we again place a supply card in the alley. The survivor spends their 3rd energy to move from row 5 to row 6. When the survivor moves to a higher numbered row, and there are zombies in the same row without a knockdown token, these zombies get to make what's called an opportunity attack as they go by. This would be resolved in the normal way of an attack. The zombie player would draw an attack card, and you would consult the appropriate line to see if it is a success or not. In this case, however, the runner has a knockdown token on it, so it does not make an opportunity attack. The survivor spends their last energy to fire the last bullet from their handgun, and they place the handgun into the discard pile. They target the middle runner that is in row 10 and draw an attack card, and it is a miss. And this ends their turn. The zombie player begins their turn by drawing a tactics card and putting it in their hand, and then moving all the zombies in play that do not have a knockdown token on it, so the zombie in row 5 does not get to move. The zombie player spends their first energy to play the tactics card Swarm. It allows them to move up to 3 zombies without knockdown tokens, 1 row each. So they move the Shuffler in row 4 into row 5, and they move the Runner and the Walker up to row 8. They spend their next energy to play the tactics card Sweaty Hands. It allows them to choose one of the survivor's weapon and place it 2 rows ahead of them. In this case, they have chosen the machete, so it is placed into row 8. They spend their third energy to move the Shuffler into the same row as the survivor, and their fourth energy is spent to make an attack. The attack is a miss. The zombie player spends their final energy to draw a zombie card, which goes in their hand. The survivor player begins their turn by drawing a tactics card and putting it in their hand. They begin their action phase and spend 3 energy to throw a grenade at row number 8. This is an automatically successful attack, as indicated by the yellow check mark. The grenade will destroy all zombies and all supplies in the targeted row. So the runner, the walker, and the machete are all placed in the discard pile. The attack will then do 2 damage and knockdown to any zombies in the adjacent row. This is sufficient to kill the Shuffler in row 9 as well. So all the zombies are placed in the discard pile, as is the machete. The survivor spends their final energy to pick up the supply card in row 6. However, before they are able to do so, the zombie player plays Surprise Attack. This puts a base zombie from the zombie discard pile into play in the same row as the survivor. It comes into play with 1 health and is knocked down. It then makes an opportunity attack. The survivor has spent their energy and does not get the supply card. The zombie player draws an attack card, and it is a miss. The survivor then decides to use their special ability and discards 1 ability token. This allows Aaliyah to make a free melee attack. She decides to target the zombie which just surprised her and draws an attack card. The attack is a success and does an additional point of damage. This is sufficient to kill the zombie, and it is placed in the discard pile. The zombie player begins their turn by drawing a tactics card and putting it in their hand. None of the zombies in play are able to move because the runner behind has a knockdown token, and the only other zombie is already in the same row as the survivor. The zombie player spends their first energy to make an attack and draws an attack card. It is a miss. They spend their second energy to bring a Shuffler into play in row 10. They spend their last 3 energy to stand the runner up in row 5, to move it into row 6, and then attack. The attack is a success, and Aaliyah is reduced to 1 health, so we flip her survivor card over to show 1 health. And this ends their turn. The survivor player begins their turn by drawing a tactics card and placing it in their hand. They immediately play that card, Fit of Rage. They spend 2 energy. It allows them to make a melee attack that would normally cost 1 energy to perform. It is automatically successful and does an additional point of damage. Because the survivor is playing the MMA fighter, it will do an extra 2 damage instead. This means that the brick will do a total of 3 damage and knockdown. This is sufficient to kill the runner, and it is placed in the discard pile. The survivor player spends 1 energy to pick up a supply card and places it immediately into play in front of them. The survivor player decides to use the unique ability and discards an ability token to make a free attack on the shuffler. The survivor draws an attack card, which is a success, and it does an additional 2 points of damage. This is enough to kill the zombie, and it is placed in the discard pile. The survivor spends their last energy to move into row 7. This allows them to claim the ability token that is there, and they place it in front of them. This ends their turn. The zombie player begins their turn by drawing a tactics card and placing it in their hand. The single zombie that is in play is allowed to move forward, and we move into their action phase. The zombie player spends their first energy to draw a zombie. They spend their second and third energy to bring out the runner as well as the friend. When the friend enters play, 4 time tokens are placed on the card. 1 token will be removed during their resolution phase. As long as there are any tokens on the friend, the survivor player is not allowed to move past them or to attack them. They must either wait for all the tokens to be removed, or they can spend 1 energy to remove 1 token. They can spend multiple energy to remove multiple tokens if they wish. The zombie player spends their 4th energy to play the tactics card more and more. If the top zombie in the discard pile is a base zombie, the zombie is placed in row 8. They spend their last energy to move the runner forward into row 8. Now that we are at the end of their turn in the resolution phase, they remove 1 time token from the friend, and their turn is over. The survivor begins their turn by drawing a tactics card and placing it in their hand. They immediately play the card, and it allows them to place a knockdown token on a single zombie. They spend their first energy to play the card Shoulder Ram. This allows them to move forward 1 row and to knock down any zombies that are in that row. After the survivor has moved, the zombie player plays the card Stumble. The survivor is knocked down, and the zombie player chooses 1 weapon in play and places it 2 rows ahead of the survivor. So the shotgun is placed in row 10. The survivor player spends 1 energy to stand up. It only costs 1 energy because all the zombies in the row with them are already knocked down. If any of them were standing, it would have cost 2 energy. The survivor player decides to make a free attack on the runner by making a head stomp. This would normally do 1 damage, but because it is the MMA fighter, if successful, it will do 2. They draw an attack card, and it is a success. They spend their 3rd energy to repeat the same action. They draw an attack card, it is also a success, and that is sufficient to kill the runner. The survivor player spends their final energy to make an attack on the shuffler with the brick. They draw an attack card, and it is a success, which kills the zombie, and it is placed in the discard pile. The zombie player begins their turn by drawing a tactics card and placing it in their hand. They then advance the friend 1 row and begin their action phase. They spend their first energy to move the friend into the same row as the survivor. They then spend their second energy to make it do a grab attack. The survivor is knocked down, and the friend is placed underneath them in the alley. This attack is automatically successful only if there are tokens on the card. By attacking, however, it removes all tokens from the card, and the survivor is now permitted to attack them. The zombie player spends their 3rd energy to stand up the zombie in row 9. They spend their 4th energy to draw a zombie card, and they place it into play. And this ends their turn. The survivor begins their turn by drawing a tactics card and placing it in their hand. Because the survivor has been grabbed by the friend, they cannot take any action other than drawing and playing cards until they have killed the friend. Unfortunately, the only weapon that they have right now is the brick. So, they spend their first energy to make an attack, and it is a success. It does 1 point of damage. They then spend their second energy to make another attack, which is also successful. They spend their 3rd energy to make another attack, which would be successful if the survivor were standing, but because they are not, it is a miss, and the friend remains at 2 health. They use their last ability token to make a free attack, which is a success. The survivor spends their final energy to make another attack on the friend, draws an attack card, and it is a miss. This ends their turn. The zombie player begins their turn by drawing a tactics card and moving both of the zombies in play forward. They spend their first energy for the shuffler to make an attack on the survivor, draws an attack card, and it is a miss. They spend their second energy for the friend to attack. Because the friend is on the ground, we look at the middle line, and this attack is a miss. The zombie player spends their third energy to move the walker up, and their fourth energy to attack. This is a success, and this is enough to kill the survivor. The survivor managed to make it to row 8, but in the end, the zombies won. And that concludes our full game playthrough of the game 30 Seconds to Live. I hope this video has been informative to you and that you have a better understanding of how the game works. Again, there are more detailed videos that provide in-depth explanations of attacking, as well as the survivor abilities and different zombie abilities and attacks. So please check out these other videos if you need to. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and you may subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch the latest videos about the game 30 Seconds to Live. Thank you very much, and good luck.